Hello, and welcome to another episode of Her Story. And my name is Wendy Sherrill, and I am here with my dear friend Savina Palazzo, and we're going to share with you a little bit about becoming God Reliant. And so we chose this subject after talking, Savina and I together. We were talking about her life and different things from her story, and the words becoming God Reliant just kept popping out because I believe that Savina has been an amazing example of God Reliant sisterhood as I've gotten to know her through the years. So I'm excited to share this time with all of you so that you can get to know Savina as well as I have had the blessing of getting to know her. So Savina, welcome.
Thank you.
And can you tell us, maybe just introduce yourself to our audience?
Well, I am Savina. I moved here to Omaha 2 years ago, I believe, from New York. And before I moved here, I had no idea where the Midwest was. I had to get a map to figure out exactly where Omaha, Nebraska was. But we've been here for 2 years. I have two really very awesome girls that are so different in personality. And they are loving their new life in the Midwest. And so my husband and I are enjoying our time meeting new disciples and building new relationships. And so, yeah, it's been a really great transition.
That's wonderful. I believe you told me you became a disciple maybe like 21 years ago. It's been a long time. Maybe you could share a little bit of your conversion story with us.
Okay. I became a Christian right after I graduated. God was like, yep, I'm going to give you enough time to graduate and then I'm going to snatch you up. So I graduated from college. I returned home. I got my first professional job. I was working in New York on Wall Street. And I was met by a friend of mine that I went to high school with.
Okay.
And this friend asked me to go to church, and I took a double take because this is somebody that wouldn't have gone to church. And so when she asked me to go to church, I was definitely interested in knowing what church got her to walk in the front door. And so we actually went to a Bible study, and I was super impressed and blown away just by the quality of the people in the room and the way that they were studying their Bible so intently, because I'd gone to church pretty much my whole life. Growing up in the South, you pretty much go to church.
Sure.
And so the thing that was really impressive is just the way that they were studying their Bible, the way that they were really trying to gain understanding. And I was hooked after that.
Wow.
I kept going. So yeah, that's kind of where it began. And believe it or not, I actually studied the Bible and got baptized in 6 days.
Wow. That's amazing. That's really cool. You mentioned that you grew up in the South, which I think is fascinating. And I know as we were talking about becoming God Reliant, we had talked a little bit about maybe being a little bit more self-reliant. And so I'm kind of wondering, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your younger years growing up in the South. And since this is her story, maybe even roll a little bit of your relationship with your mom into that sharing.
Sure.
That's a lot, but you can do
that. That is a lot, but I think I can handle it.
All right, come on.
So growing up in the South was very interesting. I grew up with a lot of family around. So my grandmother, we lived on a plot of land, and my grandmother lived in front, and my mom lived in the back. And so I had family, I had cousins, and my mom, I have 2 older siblings and a younger brother.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of people around, but I also grew up very lonely. My mom was a very hard worker. She always made sure that we were taken care of. The land that we lived on was hers. Right. The houses that we lived in, she bought them. And so she always worked really hard, but she was very rarely around. And so that created kind of like not that we couldn't have been close, but we just didn't have the opportunity to become close because she worked so much. And she had my sister when she was 18. So she didn't really have a lot of time to grow up and party and do the things you wanted to. So she pretty much did that as an adult. And so we just didn't have the opportunity to build the kind of relationship that I feel like, would have been nice. And so I just grew up very self-reliant. I grew up taking care of myself. I grew up worrying about myself. I grew up figuring out how to navigate the world, because I just kind of had to figure those things out on my own. My oldest sister wanted to be a kid. She was a teenager and she wanted to be a teenager, which is rightly so. So I couldn't really, rely on her too much to be my mom because she was a kid. So I kind of figured out that I needed to take care of myself, and that just built that kind of persona character in me very young, at a very young age.
I can see how that would happen. That self-reliance, how did that go together with, how did that self-reliant lifestyle mesh with your new disciple life?
It did not. No.
Tell me more about that.
It did not. Being a disciple, I have all these transitions in my life, growing up in the South and then moving to New York City. It's just a major, huge trauma. It's just huge. And then moving from New York to the Midwest, it's kind of hilarious. But being a disciple, the beginning stages was so very difficult because I wanted to do everything on my own. Like I wanted to, do discipleship on my own. I was like, you people are really nice and that's great. But me and God, we're good. We're going to do this thing by ourselves. And so that was really tough for me as a disciple because I made a lot of mistakes that probably could have been avoided had I just invited people into my life and invited people into this journey because I became a disciple, but I didn't know what that meant, So I needed people to help me along with that journey. But because of my experience growing up, I kind of held that same persona of, no, I got to do this on my own. If I got issues, I got to do this on my own. If I need something done, I've got to do it on my own. And so it really interfered with my spiritual growth as a young Christian. I was pretty much stunted as a young Christian. I probably for about the first 6 months of my discipleship, I kind of just came into service and I sat there by myself. And if somebody didn't approach me, I would just leave the way I came in. And so I'm very grateful that there were people who saw that and they stuck in there with me to help me out on that part of the journey.
What do you think? I'm thinking about that transition because you're nothing like that today. Like that does not describe the Savina of today. So what do you think disciples at that time, what helped you the most to make that decision to really change to being more God reliant?
I think what helped me the most is realizing that the desire to grow spiritually was not matching up with that self-reliance. And so there was so much that I wanted to do in my walk with God that I just wasn't able to accomplish with this Lone Ranger attitude. I wanted to grow, I wanted to serve, I wanted to be in relationship with people. But when you hold back, it's very difficult to be in relationships that are growing and that are changing. And so I realized that dynamic was just holding me back. I held my heart back. I didn't really give my everything because I was afraid that I was going to be hurt. And so until I started being a little more Christ-like in my relationships and more God-reliant as opposed to self-reliant, I just wasn't growing the way that I wanted to grow. And I honestly think that the people in my life saw enough in me that they invested. And they decided to stick in there with me to help me to become more God-reliant and less self-reliant.
Wow. And that took away your fear. Yeah.
It really did. Because the more that I trust people, people still hurt me. They still made mistakes. I still, avoided people on occasion because they said something or did something I didn't like. But I was able to see Christ in them because I was able to see people say, hey, are we okay?
Right.
Is everything okay? And, me being backed into a corner, having to say, no, we're not okay. And why are you talking to me? And, and so God just helped me to work through a lot of what I thought I had to be so that I could become more of what he wanted me to be. Gotcha. And so it had a lot to do with people just kind of sticking in there with me.
That's wonderful. I'm sure that's really helpful to those that are listening, because I'm sure I know we all struggle with that. So you mentioned your relationship with your mom, and you talked about really feeling that need to be self-reliant. And I'm sure as you changed and progressed to be more and more like Christ, how did your relationship with your mom change?
It changed a great deal. But let me just preface that with the fact that my mom and I don't have the best relationship today. Okay. We don't. And a lot of that just has to do with, like I said, we were never really close. We never had that opportunity to become close. But becoming a disciple helped me to just see my mom in a different light. Yeah. To see, it was easy for me to pick out all of the things that I didn't like, all of the negative things about her character, all the things that I thought, she did that was not helpful for me. But when I became a disciple, it really just helped me to see all of the things and the character traits that my mom has that I developed. And I was never able to see that as a child. Wow. I just thought, that's exactly what I don't want to do, and I just had a very poor attitude about all the things about my mom that she did well. And I think becoming a Christian helped me to have a lot more grace, a lot more mercy, and helped me to see who she is beyond her mistakes, beyond her sin, beyond the things that her failings, really. Right. So I think becoming a disciple really just helped me to see my mom in a different way. Wow.
Yeah, that's so encouraging. Good. Were there any scriptures maybe that you really sustained you through this period in your life and that you maybe go to today?
This is a trick question. Everybody knows that all the scriptures are my favorite. There's some people right now laughing because they know it's true. Okay. But I think in terms of being God reliant, one of my most favorite scriptures, notice I said one of my most favorite scriptures, is Hebrews 12. In the beginning, when it's talking about Jesus being the author and the perfecter of our faith. And for me, that's just, it stays in the back of my head. Right. I'm not writing the story. Jesus is writing the story. He's authoring my faith. So am I going to trust him to do that? And that literally has been my whole life, because my experiences taught me one thing, but being able to walk out on faith and allow God to write the story has taught me something completely different. Wow. And, the temptation is to take control and write my own story. But when I remember that Jesus is the author and the perfecter of my faith, it brings me back to just surrendering and allowing him to write the story. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm so grateful that we've had this time. And I know you're an inspiration to so many. And I know you women are going to really enjoy getting to know Savina at a higher level. And thank you for encouraging us today, Savina.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Hello, and I want to take a moment to just talk to you a little bit about our topic today of becoming God reliant, which Savina so graciously shared with us. And so I wanted to just pull a couple of points out as I was thinking about becoming God reliant. I thought of a scripture in Revelation, and Revelation chapter 1 and verse 17. It says, when I saw him, and the him here is Christ, the resurrected Christ. And John is saying, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one, and was dead. And now look, I am alive. Forever and ever I hold the keys of death and Hades. So when I think about Christ, I'm thinking that we have someone who gives us hope eternal. someone that we can rely on. And even death cannot overcome him. He has conquered our greatest fear. And so we can really entrust ourselves to him without fear. Did you notice the title is Becoming God Reliant? Because it is natural for us to be very self-reliant. And so we need to strive, or maybe I should say let go of our need to be self-reliant and to rely more and more on God and to become more and more like God and to grow in our trust of God. And that creates a willingness to really rely on God. In today's world, we talk a lot about trust. We say we have trust issues, right? And we are very cautious about who we will and won't trust in our lives. And that cautiousness is good. Like, we need to take that cautiousness to our world. I don't want to just throw that completely out the window. But the hard part is that we have a tendency to carry that cautiousness onto our relationship with God, and it prevents us from being able to really entrust ourselves to God. My husband had a saying that they used in the insurance industry, which was, "In God we trust, everyone else bring proof." And so I think we really live our lives by that standard. I picture my children when they were young, and when they were very little, they would push my hand away whenever I tried to help them do something. And I really, because they wanted to do it themselves. They wanted to, they were big, they were grown, they wanted to do it. And I envision myself doing that to God a lot. I see myself saying to God, "No, that's okay, I got this," and really pushing him away. And we know that that is something that just never really helps us in life. It never goes well for us. We need to become more and more willing to allow God to meet our needs and to help us. Psalm 1:1-3 gives me a beautiful example of what it means to be God reliant. And I wanted to share that with you. So Psalm 1 and verse 1, we're going to read all the way through verse 3. It says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or keep company with mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers." And that is a beautiful example of what it means to be God reliant. And the ways that we are going to become God reliant is through soaking up the water of life, the Word of God, to meditate on his law day and night. And if we will do that, we will become like a flourishing, well-watered, strong, and mighty tree with deep roots in our God. And that's a beautiful picture of a really strong, God-reliant woman that we can aspire to become. I hope you all enjoyed our time together, and it was just a pleasure sharing this with you. Thank you.